Sometimes hating bands is insanely justified. Now, I am not talking about no petty shit. I'm not talking about saying that Knock Loose isn't real hardcore punk, or hating Sleep Token because they're popular. And this isn't even talking about bands like Imagine Dragons, which I know a whole host of people that critique the ever-living hell out of Imagine Dragons, myself included, and they're not on this list because for all intents and purposes, they're cool dudes. They're not hurting anyone. But there are bands that done fucked up in many ways. Bands that completely changed how their fan base saw them in many ways and harbored a ton of resentment towards them. Some of these bands still have a lot of supporters, millions of supporters even. But, and I give you guys full reign to be as petty as humanly possible, let me know down in the comment section below the bands that in your opinion deserve the hate that they get. Because listen, I don't condone people going on witch hunts because they don't like someone, but there are certain people that kind of deserve a little bit more than the average bear. Now, one that really hurts my heart to say is As I Lay Dine, and this was already very gray area for many years on a lot of metalheads' minds. As I Lay Dine were one of the most classic metalcore bands of the 2000s that really brought forward the wave, and Tim Lambesis was this awesome figure in the metalcore niche, and they made crazy classic releases alongside bands like Killswitch Engage. But then all the shit happened with Tim Lambesis and it went off a cliff. Dude fucking hired a hitman to kill his wife, everyone knows the story of it, went to prison, blah blah blah. But it's everything that happened afterwards that kind of just reaffirmed the fact that it is really hard to support this band in lieu of everything. The band members literally fucking dipped. They were out of there like Wile E. Coyote. They did not want anything to do with him after some stuff that came out after. He was being abusive to the girl he was with at the time. He was in verbal altercations, supposedly physical altercations, and were the type of motherfuckers that would be so guilt-trippy and manipulative that they'd hurt themselves in the act of something, or verbally accost someone, physically accost someone. And obviously it was indicative of his anger management issues, something he had struggled with for a while. It was very clear to see, and this repetition in a lot of his behavior was just really disappointing and sad, especially because it didn't seem like rehabilitation did jack shit to make this dude not turn into a steroid pack looking motherfucker who's gonna beat on any girl he's with or scream at them or make himself out to be the victim. And this isn't just allegations, there are videos of it. It was captured. And I remember someone that was in the band saying, "You had one job, dude, get out of prison and just scream into a mic and sound cool, and you somehow failed it." And honestly, I would just suggest people to look into that. It's hard for me to listen to As I Lay Dine. I'm not really gonna go out of my way to listen to or support new material. I know that he's wanting to go on tour, and I know that he consistently addresses all of the things that happen, but it never seems to change. It always seems to come back up, and there always seems to be a new case of it. The issue is he has constantly addressed allegations, but I feel like people have been more lenient on him than they are 95% of other people in his field when it comes to this sort of shit. It keeps happening in different places, to different people, with different proof, but he keeps saying the same shit, and it just does nothing. He does nothing about it. It just keeps happening, and he likes to sweep it under the rug, and he's planning on going on a tour. He's the last member of As I Lay Dine. Who would want to be associated with that? I don't know. Is he gonna be a one-man show? I don't know. It's honestly just hard. Is it the most egregious thing of all time? The most egregious allegation that's been proven against someone? No, there are some on this list that are far worse in my opinion, but it is hard not to look at As I Lay Dine through the lens of this. Did you guys ever need an indication that the legal system just across the world is ass? Y'all knew they would be here. I have to say Lost Prophets. Of course I have to say Lost Prophets. Everyone knows the story of Ian Watkins, and if you don't, I applaud you. You're too innocent for this world, and in many ways, I envy you. Basically, he's the lead vocalist of Lost Prophets. They were a big band, did quite a few numbers, a lot of allegations came out against him, and then a lot of really bad allegations came about him, and then got proven. And I'm not gonna sugarcoat it with language. If I get demonetized for it, that's fine. He straight up just had hardcore porn, child porn. He was a sex offender. He was a pedophile. He liked diddling kids. That was his thing, and the police police even called it extreme, so it wasn't like this was some, light little side hustle for him. No, it was a full-blown operation. And then on top of that, remember how I said there were layers to this thing that just kept giving? It was the gift that kept on giving. He was a puppy fucker too. Like, he just had bestiality shit as well, and it just kept getting worse and worse. It is the single worst situation, and probably the most famous situation, of a vocalist in this sort of field, with all of this wrapped up into a bubble. It is just obscene, it is heinous, it is crazy to look at, and while it is funny to joke about, because what the actual hell, in no way, shape, or form is it to minimalize the gross ass shit that he supported, that he owned. And the thing that makes me the most upset about it all, he got 29 years for that. 29 years. Like, damn, I thought the United States was bad. I thought we were bad. 29 years. But hey, he had 10 months tacked on because he had a phone in prison. Next up, Blood on the Dance Floor. I just have personal beef with this band. Funnily enough, I was able to dodge a lot of the Blood on the Dance Floor hype at the time. I was not really in that specific section of MySpace electroniccore and emo sort of stuff. It wasn't my tempo. It was kind of cringy, even for me at the time, and that's coming from someone that was a dubstep and metalcore listener. So first off, right off the bat, always creepy how anyone bought into this childlike glimmer of weird euphemisms and candy analogies and childlike shit being put in a sexual way, in a romantic way, and pandering to a demographic that was clearly made up of vast majority children. But then everything happened with Davi Vanity, and the entire cyberbullying saga that happened with Davi Vanity, and then all of the women who stepped forward about him thereafter. I think the number was around 20 or 30 of him misusing his platform and getting with people under the guise of popularity, or using different manipulation tactics to try to get in sexually with a lot of these women, many of which were under the age of consent. Kind of like Lost Prophets. I don't think that a lot has to be said about Davi Vanity. He is a name that just lives in infamy for how much of a gross just idiot he is. But the funny thing is, even if nothing ever came out about him, I think I would still hate Blood on the Dance Floor and say they are a band worthwhile to hate. It was creepy. The concept was always creepy. And if you got enjoyment out of the sound of it, that was one thing, but I don't see what you could have gotten out of those lyrics. That's all I'll say. Kind of towing the line between the first topics and this one, Alexis Marshall, aka the frontman of Daughters, just Daughters as a whole. There was already some concerning stuff surrounding him, and a lot of it kind of played out to allegations, and so people didn't really know what to make of it, to make heads or tails of it. That wasn't until Christian Hayter, aka Lingua Ignota, the woman behind the project Lingua Ignota, released a massive, destructive statement on him and a relationship that they had. Their relationship was incredibly toxic, it was incredibly demanding, and it was not toxic on her behalf, it was very toxic on his behalf, and pretty much all of the allegations ended up being sort of confirmed and semi-addressed by Alexis himself, but there was assault involved, there was a lot of non-consensual sexual activity between the two, including times when she would be sleeping or when she would very clearly tell him that it was not something she was wanting at the time. Evidently, he was incredibly controlling and power demanding in the relationship as a whole, and in general, the coercion that kind of led to that relationship happening to begin with set the tempo and framework for everything that would come after. It is just some nasty stuff, and it is unfortunate, and it is incredibly sad to see, simply because this shit is common. I have known so many people in my life that have had things similar to this happen, and in no way am I saying like, oh, I'm comparing it to this situation. It is baffling to me how many women are in a situation like this, that have to be put through things like this, and that get defamed mind when they do, because there were some rabid and frenzied fans at the time of Daughters, because Daughters had a large influx of people thanks to Anthony Fantano and just the overall success of You Won't Get What You Want, and that just kind of made a lot of fans feel very obsessive over them. And so obviously, Woman Speaks Out About Thing, the general first reaction to it, unfortunately, is just going to be, oh no, this is defamation, and then when it's proven not to be, they go silent. Their asses pucker and they go dead silent. But with how uncanny and sort of despondent a lot of Daughters' music is, and that is the reason I like them to begin with and love that album too, along with pretty much everyone else, it kind of is weird not to hear it in a different way when you know all of the stuff that was happening pretty much around the time of its creation. It's time to get a little controversial. A band that I think deserves all of the hate, regardless of how you feel about their music, is Argos Slent. I actually really enjoy Argos Slent from a musical department, and that is absolutely where it ends. Pogrom is an interesting dude. He's just a really interesting dude. So the whole project is based around historical accuracy, being based on that, but they really like certain types of historical accuracy. It's an NSBM project without the black metal. They're a melodic death metal band. They're a death metal band, but they are a nationalist death metal band, a very white supremacist-backed death metal band. Everything about their style is dripped in, all of their language, all of their imagery, just pretty much everything, and Pogrom backs us up with pretty much everything that he says. Also, some of the bands of Argos Slent are also related to Graham Belial's Key, who they are just straight up an NSBM band, just through and through, and much like every white supremacist, he's just a fucking unapologetic anti-Semite. He claimed that multiple metal magazines, including Zero Tolerance, rejected paid advertisements and press coverage opportunities because Argos Slent is threatening to liberal pinko pseudo-extreme metal queers with underground metal being led by synagogue labels. Holy buzzwords, Batman! Like, damn, he's just going for the world record. He's slotting them in as many as he can. That's pretty much it. Like, politics are a slippery slope. Separate the art from the artist if you want. I just think as a whole, NSBM or just any form of nationalist sort of death metal or black metal or extreme music is cause to hate on it, in my personal opinion, and I am not even just solely talking about NSBM from a white supremacist standpoint. I'm not that shallow in the sense that I think that that is the only type that exists. I'm very well aware of NSBM bands that come from Japan specifically and oppose a lot of the government of Japan and oppose a lot of Buddhism. I think the reason that it is so much easier to criticize stuff coming from the Western world is simply because of the deep-baked roots of racism, not just in the United States, but just in Western culture as a whole, as well as the very big power struggle that a lot of these people see between normal people in air quotes and Jewish people, and it just is a whole muddied mess when you get paganism coming into the fold. And it's not so simple to just say white supremacists, because the reason these people are making music like this, it's going to vary depending on what NSBM band you're talking about. They cannot be cloaked in the same umbrella because they are all heinous in their own ways. They're all egregious in their own ways. They're an abomination, but they're an abomination in their own way. But me personally, I won't necessarily go out of my way to seek out NSBM music. I'm not going to not listen to NSBM music if a specific album piques my interest and is good, but I'm not going to go out of my way to support the bands by giving them money or buying merchandise or any sort of thing like that. That's my opinion on it. And I think the issue when it comes to Argos Slent is he's not just making it about the music itself and putting that image and sound in his music. He walks the walk. He talks the talk. A lot of times NSBM bands, I truly do believe, are for shock factor. They're for extremity. They're to push the envelope and the limits of what metal can be. It's supposed to be controversial and dangerous and unwelcoming and scary, and generally speaking, just pushing back against every conventional norm in society. So yeah, obviously they're going to push it to that extreme, but there are some people that genuinely believe it and some people that genuinely live it. And he's someone that you can clearly tell does that. I'm going to say it. Falling in Reverse. This one gets blown out of proportion a lot because a lot of civil discussion ends up in being called like a hater or jealous. I am a victim of this much of the time anytime I open my mouth about Ronnie Radke or Falling in Reverse, which generally speaking just proves my point, but that I digress. He pitches heat, but he doesn't know how to take it. That's him as a person. Everything that he does and the way that he has enveloped himself in a very hyper-specific version of the niche that he wants to be in is plain to see and transparent for anyone. It doesn't matter how you feel about his music. It doesn't matter if you adore his music. It doesn't matter if you find so much enjoyment and value out of it or you absolutely despise it. I am more towards the despise it category, but I have actually praised some of Falling in Reverse's modern work. I think there are some songs and certain reimagined versions of stuff and certain things vocally that Ronnie does as a vocalist that I think are praiseworthy, that I think production-wise do sound cool. But with that being said, while I can be impressed by the success of a band and applaud the talent that goes into that, I can simultaneously look at a person and say that they have based their entire identity on this persecuted complex, this martyr complex that has been rampant in Ronnie's mind for years on end now, ever since his incarceration. The first stuff he came out with was cool. It was building a theme. It was him addressing stuff. It was him doing it in a very Ronnie and provocative way, but it also felt like a maturing direction for Falling in Reverse. And then it just fell off a cliff when he started to collaborate with a ton of different people that oddly enough fit one specific type of demographic. And then past that point, every single thing about him became everyone's out to get him, everyone hates him, he's canceled. No, you're not. Canceling doesn't exist. I die on that hill. Canceling does not exist. Dave Chappelle's still selling out stuff. Falling in Reverse is selling out literal stadiums. The culture has shifted in such a violent way that you are not going to be able to remove someone from any space. It's not going to happen unless you're just part of a business or a label and they choose to take you off of it because they just don't agree with your messaging and they don't feel like you represent them well enough, i.e. blacklisting from a private business. It doesn't happen. It really doesn't happen. It's not possible to happen. There's no such thing as it happening, because in the modern age of digital footprints and ravenous fan bases and parasocial dynamics and just becoming the massive embodiment of every political discourse nowadays, yeah, it's easy to see why people don't like Ronnie Radke. And it's funny that Ronnie will just shit down the throats of people, have a response, and then act like they weren't allowed to do that. He does not like being talked to like that. He cannot take criticism. He loves to attack people. He feeds off that negative energy. He'll make a new album about it, and damn, good for him, I guess. Alright, I sniped a right-winger, let's snipe a left-winger. TXII. God, I hate TXII, man. I hate TXII, I think, more than Ronnie Radke, and that is saying so much. He is so damaging to so many communities. I've said this, I've made multiple videos about him. I got shit years ago from so many determined TXII fans that are probably pushing 15 and do not know how to do their own eyeliner, telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about. I wish I was wrong. I wish that he was a good representative. I wish that he actually did do something good for the community. I wish that he was a good beacon. And a lot of people are getting that from him. Good. If you are, good for you. I am very happy for you. I've always said and encouraged that if I don't get something from something, but you do, that is amazing. More power to you. I'm happy for you. That's your experience. But TXII has always felt incredibly fake. And most of the time when people come to his defense, it just plays into the very narrative that he has painted of himself, his poking and prodding of Christians, his weird ass addiction to appealing to every fetish type of culture in the alternative community, putting himself very clearly cut into positions where people are going to call him cringe or dumb, and then utilizing that. He is indicative of the TikTok and YouTube Shorts era of music. He very much is. Every dumb thing that he makes about every little song and dumb short in TikTok where he's like, did I just make the hardest rock song of 2024? He is everything that's wrong with Revival, and he consistently pushes stereotypes that makes the communities he is a part of just get hurt more. Not on his behalf, because clearly he doesn't really give that much of a fuck. It's the people listening to him that are going to be harmed by the stereotypes that he pushes, by the ammunition he gives these groups, by everything that he does, because he is a walking poster child for everything wrong with the Revival scene. And that's why I said that I would much rather have an artist like MGK or Youngblood have people look up to them, because while they are flawed, especially MGK, they are at least walking the walk and clearly have some passion and love and interest in what they are doing. Which I am very sure, I am positive in fact, that beneath the surface, TXII is probably a normal person who enjoys the music, but it doesn't bleed through that much. Probably the most recent entry to when I was making this video is Disturbed. I made an entire video about the David Draymond situation. I heavily implore you guys to go check that out, because I go over everything in a lot of context, because it is very difficult to talk talk about. It is very controversial, it is very multifaceted, but I think that it is very much in Disturbed fans specifically right to kind of hate them right now. A lot of the bands on this list so far have been bands and projects just generally that people from the outside looking in have reasons to hate. And obviously, people have hated Disturbed for a long time. There's definitely been moments where people have looked at them as cringy new metal, blah, blah, blah. They make dumb music, but that's the petty reason. That's like the dumb, I don't like the music reason. They're popular, goo goo gaga. But for fans, I think that it hit very hard to find out that Disturbed pretty much went against the entire narrative that they have been world building around since their inception, and being very hypocritical where their messaging stood, to where you kind of have to reevaluate, well, where exactly do they stand? Did any of this mean anything? And just being very disappointed in David Draymond overall. But unfortunately or fortunately, it is a more gray area sort of situation than a lot of people are giving it credit for, so that's why I suggest you go check out my video. But the gist of it is he signed some bombs that were going over to Gaza. Disturbed has always been very anti-war. He comes from a Judaist past, even though he kind of denounced a lot of it. He has Jewish heritage, and in general, he has openly backed Israel very hard in the Israel-Palestine conflict, as well as was signing bombs that were going over in Gaza to God knows where, and then playing every criticism of that off to anti-Semitism, which is its own thing. Let's go back into petty territory a little bit with Trapped. Chris Taylor Brown, one of the most infamous names in modern rock and metal, but not because Trapped is infamous. Outside of like one or two banger songs that everyone remembers from a very cringy time of alternative rock and metal, Trapped is famous because their frontman just straight up uses Trapped's social media to antagonize everyone, just attacks everyone, left, right, center, fans, haters, detractors, people who listen to them, people who support them. It doesn't matter. Other bands, other things, political stuff. He literally uses it as a vent tool, as a diary, as an arsenal. It is an artillery cannon that he fires at anyone he has fucking liked in the past or disliked. It is hilarious. I will say it is not necessarily that deep, and he hasn't really gone out of his way to say anything so offensive that it's like irredeemably undefendable. It's just his attitude. It's his baby rager attitude. That's all. It's just funny. He is petty. He is absolutely petty as hell, and it's just really funny to behold. But I could definitely make some individual videos or a part 2 of this, because there are so many bands and artists that were on the short list of this and just didn't make it. But I want to know down in the comment section below your opinions of my list. If you agree or disagree, there is no wrong answer, as well as your list for some of the bands that you think deserve the hate. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.